that matter. India's foreign trade landscape is evolving rapidly, which is driven by the free trade agreement negotiations and revisions to existing trade treaties with key global markets. As of 2025, India is in talks with major partners including United States, European Union and a number of ASEAN nations, while also exploring new agreements with Africa, Latin America and Arab Gulf. As of 2025, India has 13 active free trade agreements and several ongoing negotiations aimed at strengthening bilateral and regional trade partnerships. Additionally, India is re-evaluating its investment treaties and preferential trade agreements to align with contemporary economic realities, ensuring a balanced approach between global investor protection and national interests. In the backdrop of the India and United Kingdom signing a free trade agreement, which both the nations have been negotiating for years together, let's take a look at the recent trade agreements signed by India. In 2024, India deepened its trade ties with two major blocs. A preferential trade agreement with Mercosur, the South Asian American bloc, offered 10 to 100% tariff concessions on 450 lines with exports totaling over $8.1 billion. In the same year, India also signed a trade and economic partnership agreement with EFTA, unlocking a $100 billion investment commitment over 15 years from the European Free Trade Group. Back in 2022, India inked two crucial deals, one with Australia offering zero tariffs on 96% of Indian exports and another with the UAE, which removed tariffs on 99% of Indian goods, both boosting exports to a robust $35.6 billion. And in 2021, India signed a comprehensive economic partnership with Mauritius, granting preferential access to 310 Indian export items, with exports valued at $778 million. These trade pacts are part of India's larger strategy to boost export competitiveness and attract foreign investments. Let's open up this discussion. Joining me on the telecast is Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Ambassador, in the backdrop of Prime Minister Modi traveling to United Kingdom and signing that all-important free trade agreement with United Kingdom, we also discuss the number of comprehensive strategic partnership deals, a number of preferential trade agreements, a number of free trade agreements that India has signed with a number of countries, whether it is the ASEAN nations in the subcontinent, with the South American countries, United Kingdom, European Union. Are we inching closer towards building a comprehensive, more cooperative environment with other world leaders in a bid to further develop our economy? And are we moving fast enough in doing so?
Megha, I think your question has so many things in that one sentence that I really do not know where to begin and what to say and what to address here. First of all, you talked about comprehensive partnership, it's a strategic partnership. You talked about economic agreements, EFTA, etc. You talked about investment agreements, bilateral investment agreements, trade agreements. Now, these are all very, very different agreements. All of them are very different. A strategic partnership agreement does not have, I'm not saying that it does not always have, but it is not really addressing the economic issues. They mostly address the strategic political issues, cooperation in terms of security, etc., etc. A free trade agreement that we are talking about really here and for which Prime Minister Modi is in London, a free trade agreement is basically to talk about promoting trade on the basis of offering, and it's not free really. Free is a misnomer. It's a trade agreement between two countries or two blocs, essentially offering bilateral trade concessions, reduced tariffs or no tariffs on certain lines, depending upon where your interests are. And they are therefore not free in terms of the tariffs, but they are not even free in terms of what they actually achieve. For example, in the case of India and the UK, the agricultural trade has been and remains really the major issue of contention. Both UK and India have to protect their agricultural sector. For India, it is food security. For UK, it is their liquor industry. Johnny Walker Black Label which is consumed so much in India that Scotland doesn't even produce that quantities. So everybody has different objectives. Auto sector. Therefore, when we talk about the trade agreement, it is in terms of identification of those lines by the governments, mostly in this case, and hopefully the lines on which the trade bodies, the chambers of commerce, the industry agrees. And very often there is a gap between what the industry wants and what a government is able to get them really. So in this case also India and UK, I'm afraid I do not think that the trade agreement that we are signing is really a free trade agreement, that it is offering tariffs at the kind of a thing that suits our industry. But we are signing the trade agreement because there are several politically persuasive points, leverages, which are working. And we do hope that by signing this trade agreement with the UK, we will be able to convey a message to both the European Union and the USA that if we want a trade agreement, we want it to be balanced, we want it to be in our interest, and we want it to be basically benefit both the sides. Hopefully, that will take pressure off our backs in both the areas. I know that I have not been specific enough, but there is nothing specific that we can talk about in these cases. The lines are known to the industry, they will work on those things. I'll give you an example of India ASEAN a free trade agreement that we signed. That agreement became a resource, became a conduit for China to dump its goods into India through ASEAN. Now, if that is what we want, at the same time, the issue is our own trade, our own industry. Are they competitive enough? Our labor sector is so highly biased that the cost of production because of the labor sector is not in our favor. So what do we do? I am bringing in all these issues, Megha, because what I want to say is even the trade specialists scratch their heads when they talk about these kind of FTAs behind closed doors. They do not know what to say, what to work on. And therefore, to debate India-UK free trade agreement becomes even more complex as far as I'm concerned. Megha.
Right. All right. Those are interesting points. Let's try to dissect them further. Yogendra Kapoor is also on the telecast. So is Sharad Kohli. Sharad Kohli, coming to you about how India needs to divest itself when dealing with world economies, when dealing with various countries in different continents, and how do we get the best of all worlds in signing these trade deals, these comprehensive deals, preferential agreements. Several of these conversations, communication that is at various levels, and how can two countries be mutually benefiting from the deals and the agreements that then become the norm in the coming years?
Good evening, Megha. Good evening to my fellow panelists and Newsx viewers. I think the slogan which goes to answer your question in 2 words is India first. I think this new India now looks after its interests first. Whenever we sit down to sign a deal with any part of the world, in fact, the deal with the US is in the limbo because US wants a free entry of agri and dairy, and which we definitely cannot allow. So this India prior to 2014, I'm sorry if I'm sounding political, so be it. I don't care because there is a difference. If there is a date which matches with a certain political establishment, then so be the case. Well, prior to 2014, this is how we used to be. Sir, whatever you say. By the way, the meaning of sir is slave, I remain. That's what sir means, SIR. So we were dealing with other countries with folded hands. Whatever you say, sir, we agree. But I'm glad that ever after this government came, the whole stance has changed now. We know our structure of economy. We cannot allow goods which harm our economy. For example, agriculture. For example, dairy. A classic example is they wanted us to import fodder which had meat. They wanted our cattle to be served meat. We cannot allow that. They wanted us to, when I say they, I meant the US. Let me not mince around the words. They wanted genetically modified crops. We cannot allow. So I think the motto and the slogan of negotiations of this new India is we will keep our country first. And the biggest slogan of them all, Megha, is that today the world needs India more than India needs the world. In the last 11 years, that's a paradigm shift which has taken place. We used to need the world at all times. Today, from defense to agri, we've become food sufficient. We are perfectly secure vis-a-vis food. We don't need anybody's help. But there are countries in the so-called, I'm putting in inverted commas, in the so-called developed world. Today, they need us more than that. So as far as India and UK are concerned, I think UK has. I'm glad it will have to step out of the colonial past. If the deal is being, if the negotiations of the deal is being happening with a colonial background, nothing is going to work out. We have left UK behind. They were the fifth largest. We overtook them ages ago. We are now the fourth largest. We are growing faster. We are growing at 7%. They are barely growing. So I think the deal and negotiations are happening in that backdrop. And when it comes to textiles, when it comes to leather, when it comes to chemicals, when it comes to engineering goods, when it comes to garments, apparels, I think we have a lot. And the target between India and UK by 2030 is 120 billion. This categorically shows that UK as of today, I'm not sounding negative, please don't get me wrong, but UK as of today is not witnessing new investments coming. When I say new investments, I mean capital investments. When in that scenario, when your 70 million population needs goods, where does it get from? The only choice is you import from countries who can supply to you cheaper. I think that is the only way. So which is why I say UK needs India more than India needs UK. So in that backdrop, the deal would be happening. We have crossed $825 billion of exports. And besides this, Mega, with 20 million, 2 million population of Indian origin over there, I think if you see the rich list of UK today, you will find so many people of Indian origin over there. And we should not forget that a lot of rich people over the last 2 years have left UK. So UK basically is draining itself out in that scenario. And keeping in mind the storm caused by US, I think this deal becomes absolutely imperative for both India and UK. I think, as I said earlier, I would like to reiterate, Megha, just allow me to say, US has brought rest of the world together in expediting such deals quicker than they would have happened otherwise, Megha.
Okay, Professor Madan Nalapat is also on the telecast with me. Professor Nalapat, now, when we are signing these trade deals, it also becomes India to become a manufacturing hub, because here we take a look at what is India offering to the world, to the United Kingdom, to the ASEAN nations. I mean, it's besides textiles and garments and gems and jewelry, we seem to have little to offer. Meanwhile, we have been importing automobiles and alcohol and cosmetic brands and so on and so forth. So where should India be working aggressively to build a portfolio that is going to be attractive enough for countries to import those goods and services that are costly, that are actually going to bring large amounts of revenues into the government exchequer?
Well, Megha, I'd like to take over from where Sharat left off, and I fully agree with his points. The fact is that the India-UK FTA, when it gets signed, it will be a lesson to the US, because the US is demanding everything to be one way, the US way, and nothing India's way, which is not possible. I mean, the colonial mentality seems to have shifted from London to Washington, and I'm surprised about that, and I'm very glad we are resisting that. We are holding, in fact, a delegation of the US trade negotiations is supposed to come this month, but we have politely told them the differences are too wide for it to be bridged, so please make it in August. And by that time, let's resolve our differences. We have to protect our farmers. We have to protect our consumers. Genetically modified food can be, can frankly be very dangerous. So all this situation is there. But now what we need to concentrate on, Mega, and I'm happy to say the government is now doing, especially in Modi 3.0, is to ensure that domestic and foreign investment comes in a big way, and to ensure that we have Make in India and Make by India. Make in India is very important because over the decade after decade, we have had huge trade deficits. And as Sharath said, our trade is now rising finally. I think very hard-nosed FTAs are needed. The Indian-ASEAN FTA, as has correctly been pointed out, was a very one-sided FTA, and there's no point in trying to get points by signing concessions, because we saw from our own experience, the more concessions you give, the more is demanded and the less you get in return. So the reality is to be hard-nosed, and I think now what's important is to ensure that Indian entrepreneurs are able to build in India, make in India, and you have we can have an array of component parts, etc., made in India. You should get international majors to invest in India in building their, say, aircraft or cars or whatever you want, manufacturing, so that our skilled labor can be put to use. And what we have, Mega, in abundant strength, is the Indian worker. And may I say that the Indian worker is second to none when he's given a certain amount of training. And on-the-job training is all he needs. Given that on-the-job training, he can be the best in the world and also be very cost-effective. So I think, Mega, the sky is the limit. In fact, the sky is not the limit. With our space station and all that, we have gone way beyond that. The reality is, what's important now is to concentrate on Make in India and more Make by India.
Okay. Yogendra Kapoor is also on the show with me. Yogendra Kapoor, also at this point where the US administration led by President Donald Trump is adopting a more protectionist policy when it comes to trade, how are other nations going to react to it? Because, countries like South Korea and Japan and Philippines, both of which have signed a deal just a few hours ago. Again, India at this point of time, moderately dependent, if I don't say hugely dependent, on that very important free trade, bilateral trade agreement with the United States of America. Here there is immense dependency on one nation. Meanwhile, a number of these deals at various levels being signed and then taken forward by the Commerce Ministry from different parts of the world. How do we build an equilibrium? And also, again, this contradiction, while being self-reliant, also working with the world to be in a mutually symbiotic relationship.
Right, Megha. I would like to start with that, the signing of the FTA or the economic cooperation agreements with various countries other than the United States is a step in the right direction. But I think the major challenge before India is the implementation part, because it remains the key. I mean, you cannot have agreements in place and at the same time, they are not seen to be moving forward. I'll give an example. In case of India-Australia agreement, it was signed in 2021, but in terms of implementation, it stands at the very place where it started from. So I think it's very important that whatever India may be doing in its best interest, it needs to translate also in numbers. Now, point is that we may be going up the ladder in terms of becoming the fourth largest economy, but if we look at our contribution towards world GDP, I would say that it is so minuscule that it remains below 3%, and it has been like that for years. So the point is that the government and industry, they need to be in sync. They need to see where the things are not moving on ground, because at the end of the day, I think the entire world also sees that is the private investment in its own country increasing on a arithmetic progression or geometric progression basis, which is not taking place in our country. So the point is, when we look at foreign investment coming into India, they also see that are we having the right framework wherein the capital is allowed to be able to grow. The legal system, the framework is such that it allows you to do the business freely. The point is that we are at the threshold where basically the things are not moving the way they should be. And I feel that going forward, it's very important whether it is the ease of doing business or the cost of doing business. These are important parameters that need to be looked into by the government and industry.
Okay. All right. I'm completely out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, sharing your views. On that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching Newsx.